Welcome to the Huntsman's Journal podcast, a hunting story radio show. And now, your host, Adam Huntsman.
Welcome to the Huntsman's Journal podcast, a hunting story radio show. I'm your host, Adam Huntsman, and today we'll be telling you the story of Jason Felt and his hunt for a free-ranging axis deer in Texas. Okay, welcome to the show, everybody. This is episode number 17, and today we'll be speaking with Jason Felt from the Bowhunter Box Club about his hunt for some free-ranging axis deer in Texas. And I'm really, this was kind of one of those conversations where originally we weren't even going to be talking about axis deer, and as the conversation had kind of, took on a life of its own, the subject of axis hunting actually came up and, really kind of piqued my interest, and we just kind of decided to roll with it. So it's a really cool story. If anybody out there isn't familiar with the axis deer population in Texas, they have a herd, or they have a population of free-ranging axis deer, and apparently there's no closed season. There's nothing, no real regulations about hunting them, since they are they are considered an exotic species. So you get to basically hunt them year-round. They've got varying rut times since they're from all over the place originally. So you could see velvet deer and rutting deer and hard-horned deer all in the same afternoon. So it's really cool, and it just seems like a really interesting opportunity to pursue. So we're going to talk about a whole host of different things, ranging from his first hunt for axis deer, how he got into it, and then we'll actually even dive into just the species itself, and how we can go about hunting them, and just little bits of information about them. So definitely excited to get into this conversation here. Other than that, before we have Justin on the line, just a quick update in regards to the Oregon trip. I'm not sure if anybody followed along on Instagram. We tried to do some live stuff, but with no internet, we kind of just basically had to go along and post up some pictures after the fact on the storyboard. But it seemed like there was a lot of people that were following along. So if you did follow along, thank you. And if you haven't, definitely check us out on Instagram, because we're going to be doing a lot more on the storyboard and the live stuff. So definitely want to keep an eye on that. But either way, Oregon was awesome. Just got to spend some time with friends. We checked out Mount Hood. We checked out Multnomah Falls. Just basically did a lot of driving around, a lot of hiking, a lot of photography. Took a ton of pictures. So I really can't wait to kind of go through those, and I'll be sharing with you guys as I kind of work through them. But either way, it was just nice to kind of break out and expand my horizons a little bit, and kind of check out a whole new mountain range. But either way, like I said, awesome trip. Had an awesome time. And right now, it's time for another awesome hunting story. So let's get Jason on the line and hear about hunting free-range axis deer in Texas. Okay, and on the phone with us today is Jason Felt. How you doing today, Jason?
I'm doing well. How are you, Adam?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. Definitely can't complain, and I'm excited to have this conversation. We've been trying to have it for a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk to you as well. So glad we got it all together tonight.
Yeah, me too. So now, like usual, before we started talking, I gave the listeners an abbreviated version of who you are. But why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit more about yourself before we actually get into the meat and potatoes of the hunting story here.
All right. Well, I own a company called Bowhunter Box Club. So it's a monthly subscription box for bow hunters specifically. So it's a lot of fun, but just a bow hunter in Texas, loves to hunt deer and passionate about it. So just led to working on that to provide a great service for other bow hunters. So, but just love bow hunting, shooting bows, and talking about it with friends, man.
Perfect. No, it's good. That's a good matchup for a podcast. Then, how was?
Hey, that's great.
Yeah. How was your 2016 season?
2016 season was actually pretty slow for me. I was successful in putting meat in the freezer, so in that way it was definitely a win. But as far as I didn't get a hunt as much as I wanted to. So I've got two young kids. I've got a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. He was 2 at the time, but he ran into a couple health issues and actually ended up having to get his appendix removed, and that all happened right in the middle of deer season. So a lot of my hunting trips kind of got scrapped for that. So overall the hunting season, I did, like I said, I put 2 deer in the freezer meat-wise, and I shot 2 turkeys also. So we got the fall season. You can shoot hens or gobblers as far as turkey out here. We have a lot of them. So we let some arrows fly in the short amount of time that we did get a hunt though. So it was fun.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Glad that you got some meat in the freezer, and it's always good to release a couple arrows. So that's awesome. As far as
absolutely.
As far as the deer, what kind of deer were you able to harvest? Now, I know you said you're in Texas, and you've got whitetails and axis and all sorts of fun stuff down there. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We are certainly lucky out in West Texas where I hunt. We have an awesome quantity of deer altogether, but we've got whitetail and axis. This past fall, I only was able to harvest whitetail myself. But I did still have some axis meat in the freezer from the previous, like in late season the last year. But so that with the slow season I had, we'll probably be making a trip out here pretty soon and hunt some axis deer over the summer, since we are lucky enough to hunt those year round.
That's all. I tell you what, I wish I could hunt year round. I mean, there's always something to go after around here, but I mean, there's nothing quite as I mean, it's hard to beat big game hunting, meaning deer sized, hog size, whatever. So that's pretty exciting, man.
Absolutely. That's why when we're like right now, it's turkey season. Everybody's geared up for turkey, and that's fun. I mean, I don't mind shooting a turkey, but it's hard for me to get too excited about turkey when we can hunt axis deer out where I hunt. So, like I said, we got an awesome herd of free range axis deer. So, they're an exotic. You can hunt them year round. No close season, no bag limit. And they're in great quantity, so you really run no risk of doing much harm. Like you actually got to harvest quite a few to keep them from pushing all the whitetails out, so you can hunt those as well.
Gotcha. No, doesn't sound like too hard, or not hard. Doesn't sound like the worst job. Doesn't sound like the worst job you could have. So that's cool, man.
Oh no, it's a lot of fun for sure.
Very cool. Well, I tell you what, why don't we hop right into the story, because I know we had discussed possibly doing a two-parter or a 2-for-1 kind of deal in this episode, but originally we wanted to talk about your introduction into bow hunting, your first bow kill, and then maybe talk some more about this axis hunting. But before we do that, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your first well, I tell you, before we even get into the hunt, let's set the scene a little bit. How old were you whenever you first started bow hunting? Was this something that you've done all your life, or did you get into it later in life? Or talk about that for a second.
I got into it later in life, and not that I'm too far into the journey yet, but no, our family's originally from Kansas. I moved down here to Texas when I was really young, and kind of moved into the city. So while I always had a great interest in hunting, I just didn't get a chance to do it when I was young. So after I graduated from college and started making some money on my own, and started saving my pennies, and bought my first rifle, and I had a great interest in it, and I got extremely lucky, and through a friend of my wife's, I was introduced to my buddy Eric, and we went on a little trip together, and we were talking about it and how much deer hunting is his favorite thing. And I was like, I've always wanted to go. I bought a rifle, and at this point, all I shot is paper. And he goes, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to fix that. And so that following fall, he invited me out to go hunt with him out on their lease in West Texas, where I'm lucky enough to still hunt today. And that was just a few years ago. And we went out there, and that first fall was so much fun, and he was just getting into bow hunting and had bought a bow, and so I was like, I hadn't even shot a deer with my rifle yet, but I was like, man, that's cool. I want a bow. So did a little research, bought my first bow, and I was like, hey, even if I don't get into bow hunting, I can kind of shoot it around, some archery target practice. And
Sure.
Fun. And so then that next fall, we went out for opening week in a bow season, and had about everything go wrong that possibly could. But I was, it was just so fun to be so close to the animals that it was just unbelievable. And then that November, it's crazy enough, I actually did shoot my first doe with my rifle one afternoon, and then the next morning I was like, well, I'm going to go bow hunt. And so I took my bow out. It was extremely cold that morning, and, being a fair-weather Texan, I'm not the hugest fan of cold, so I went to the biggest box blind we have for bow hunting, and so I was like, I'm trying to stay warm. I took a big old Carhartt with me to get in there and got all settled in, and, got in there, put all my stuff down, got all set up, took the Carhartt off, camo so I can blend in, all that good stuff. Sat all morning to pretty much see nothing. I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, that was fun. Guess it's time to go. So I loaded up all my stuff, packed up my bag, even made the fatal mistake of taking my release off, closed the windows of the blind, packed everything up, put my jacket on, got everything out, and looked up, and I see a doe out the window of the blind. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I was like,
yeah, never fails. It never fails.
Absolutely. But I was like, okay, I can make this happen, So I was like, we're going to be optimistic here. I was like, if I just take this coat off really slow. I mean, this felt like it took 30 minutes. I don't know. It may have been a couple minutes, but took my coat off real slow, got that put down, got my bag unzipped slowly, got my release back on, and obviously the wind must have been doing something right, so they didn't hear all this noise because that doe was only about 18 yards from where I was in this little wooden box blind.
Mm-hmm.
And got the release back on, and then it's like, got an arrow knocked. I'm like, okay, great. Well, next problem, the window's closed. So I'm like, how am I going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, this blind had some windows on it from a company called Deerview, and they have a nice felt padding on the edge of the windows. So
Mm-hmm.
that was probably a lifesaver. I probably owe them something for making this happen that day. And I unclasped the window, and I just slowly moved it like a couple inches at a time every time she was looking away. At one point, I was stuck in this like weird crouched down holding pattern halfway with the window to where like I was just shaking, like, please look away, please look away. And after a few minutes of all this craziness that should have been enough to scare away all the deer in the area, was able to get everything set up, get sat down, calmed down, and she hung around long enough and moved around into the shooting lane and made the shot, a nice double lung shot. She went about 40 or 50 yards, tumbled over, and man, I've never had an adrenaline rush quite like that, and just shaking and excited, and like, oh man, it was the best. So ever since that moment, I have been hooked on bow hunting, to say the least.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's definitely an addicting feeling. It's kind of weird to say, I don't know. I always feel like it's kind of weird to compare it to an addiction, but it really is, because once you've kind of tasted it a little bit, you're kind of like, man, this is what I've been meant to do. You know what I mean? Like this is the thing. This is it. So yeah, that's awesome, man.
Oh, absolutely. It was incredible. So, again, like just where I was lucky that everything happened as it should have, and being such a rookie to it, it was like a few minutes later I go out there and get my arrow. It was a clean pass through, which is awesome, and she expired extremely quickly, which I was very thankful for. And I mean, it was probably about 30 minutes after the shot we had her recovered, loaded up, and heading back to camp. And so it was just an incredibly cool weekend. I mean, my first deer overall, my first bow kill, sharing it with some great people that weekend. But, man, just that fall led to such an obsession with bow hunting to where, I did kill several more deer with my rifle after that, including the axis deer, which I know you're excited to talk about.
I am. Yeah, I said originally that definitely wasn't part of the plan, and then whenever we started talking about it, I'm like, "What, axis? All right, yeah, let's talk axis. That sounds like fun."
Yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, it's just when you get that rush of even on the days that you don't harvest an animal with a bow, you just get in so close and to watch and learn about. I mean, there's not a time you go out and bow hunt, and, especially for us, we're lucky that there's a large number of deer, so it's not very often you're going to go sit and just see deer.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in 20, 30, 40 yards from them and you can really watch their behaviors and study them and be that close to where, man, it's just such a cool experience. Like, it just doesn't get much better than that. So, been hooked ever since then. And, like I said, my buddy Eric, I owe him the world as far as being obsessed with bow hunting like I am right now, because, it was right at the beginning of his bow hunting journey, and we kind of went into it together. And he shot his first deer with a bow that same fall that I did, I believe, just a little earlier than I did. And since then, we've been so excited about it that just about everybody that we hunt with pretty much exclusively bow hunts now. So once it gets to where it's just deep in the season and there's no meat in the freezer, then
then you gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Yeah. So we've got a running joke at camp, at deer camp, and if you shoot something with a rifle, you're on probation. And I don't think there's any official penalty for probation yet, other than just having to face everybody else and say, hey, not that, and we all still, hey, there's nothing wrong with rifle hunting. We got nothing against it. You're no better or worse whether you hunt with a rifle or a bow, but it's just a fun thing for us at camp. But
sure, yeah. Like I said, all in good fun, but like I said, ultimately at the end of the day, we gotta. If you're running low on meat, you got to do what you got to do. So.
Oh, absolutely, and then plus, just like anybody else, hunting's great, watching the animals is great, but the camaraderie with friends and everybody at camp, hunting camp, is just as much a part of it as well. So.
Yeah, it's very true. Very true.
Yeah.
I was going to say, as far as so that was your first, kind of. Exposure to, hunting and bow hunting, and, it was all kind of wrapped up in the same season. Now, since then, again, you're hunting Texas, as far as, tactics and your style of hunting, what's your usual go-to? Are you hunting from, are you hunting out of, like you said, more like the box blinds? Are you doing a lot of, scouting and then doing running gun setups, or what's your, usual, repertoire looking like?
So we hunt out in West Texas, and with the landscape and a lot of mesquites, there's not, you can't hunt from a tree stand. We don't have any trees that could support that.
Okay.
With the way the brush and everything is, and it's real noisy and crunchy to walk around, spot stock is very difficult as well. So most of our hunting is done from ground blinds. We do have some quad pods to get you up in the air a little bit, but so most of that's done from there. So we do, obviously in Texas, baiting's legal, so we have several feeders that we can hunt over. And then we've also got several setups over some different trails and stuff like that. So, hunting over a feeder is great in some ways because, your odds of putting some meat in the freezer are pretty good. But with the volume of deer we have, that actually adds some challenges that you wouldn't think about too, because especially if you're in at 20 yards and you're trying to shoot one with a bow, and you've got, if you've got a dozen deer right there, that's a lot of eyes on you, a lot of ears. It doesn't take much of a mistake to really mess it all up and ruin your opportunity. So,
yeah.
But we also have several blinds and pop-ups set up over some different trails and other different areas away from feeders and away from those areas. And we really, especially you're putting out trail cameras and stuff and past successes, if you're going after a bigger buck, that's typically where you're going to find them, is away from there. So
gotcha.
My buddy's uncle did harvest a 161-inch whitetail out there a couple seasons ago, and it was definitely a good ways away from any feeder. So, but definitely the vast majority of it's ground blind hunting with the landscape we have. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's funny, with the whole baiting thing. I hear both sides of the story, like you said, where some people like to bait, some people don't. To me, it's whatever anyone wants to do. But I feel like there's this kind of stipulation, or not stipulation, but there's this kind of sense that if you bait, you're basically you're guaranteed you're gonna automatically get a deer. It's gonna make it so much easier. And then at the same time, like you were just saying, I hear on the opposite side that it's not a cure-all by any means. So it's interesting to see
not
that.
At all. And then not to mention, there's still no guarantee. You can walk into the stand wrong, and your scent's going to mess it all up. And,
yep.
There's so many things. The deer are such smart animals. The feeder is great. and you're also out there putting in the work, filling it, setting it up, putting things in the right places, clearing stuff. You're still working to get it there. But yeah, it's one of those deals. Like, people want to argue about some of that, but we all just have to support each other as hunters. We got enough opposition as it is.
Yeah, I hear you there, man. It's sad, unfortunately, how much arguing that goes on when at the end of the day we're all just, we're all hunting, we're all just doing the same thing. And it sounds corny, but
Absolutely.
again, we're all on the same team here. It's all good, But,
No, absolutely. And as long as you're doing everything lawfully, then hey, support everybody.
No, amen.
But yeah, it's so far from a guarantee though. Like, I don't know if it's legal where you are, but it's definitely there's added benefit, but I can tell you there's a lot of times you can sit out there, and even if you have a trail camera over that feeder and you're like, oh yeah, there's deer there every day, you can go out there and be like, well, there's nothing.
Yep, where'd the deer go?
You're still absolutely. So, Like I said, we get out there and hunt quite a bit, but you're not guaranteed. There's plenty of trips that you're driving home empty-handed as well.
Oh yeah, no, I can imagine. Yeah, and now, kind of to segue back to it, like to answer your question, it's not legal where I'm at, but where I'm at, I could see a similarity where the one property where I hunt, it's super thick, and now in my mind, when you're talking about the thick mesquite and the brush and everything where you're hunting, I can kind of draw like a little similarity there, theoretically. And I know for me, hunting in those types of situations, it becomes really hard to really pinpoint down bedding areas versus, feeding areas and kind of all the transition areas in between. Do you find that's the same thing in this or in your situation or not? And then if so, how do you, how do you hunt that?
We actually have a lot of, we hunt on 1,000 acres, and there's a lot of it that because we really don't want to pressure. That's one thing with Texas is there is a lot of hunters, and in a lot of areas, they really pack them in a lot of places. I can tell you on the fence lines on the edge of where we hunt, there's people right there. So we actually leave good chunks of the land that we hunt untouched. We don't walk in there. We don't mess with it. We let them have some safe havens. So there's definitely some bedding areas in there. You can see high traffic areas. But yeah, it can be a little bit difficult to distinguish that. And then there's a lot of movement between properties. So you don't really have access to go check and see where all they're going. But where the property we are on, if you actually look at it from an aerial map, it's way thicker than all the ones that surround it. So it holds the deer pretty well. So you can definitely, there's a couple fairly distinguished bedding areas.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of the same situation that I'm in, where the main property that I hunt, like you said, it's, if you look at it from an aerial map, it is by far the thickest, nastiest stuff, like within like a 10-mile circle, and it's it's good because it draws in a lot of deer, but at the same time, the reason there's a reason why they're there, so it makes it makes hunting them pretty difficult. Not to mention, I haven't told you, I'm in the Pittsburgh area, so Pennsylvania's got the rolling hills and all that stuff, so you've got like all the breaks in topography, so it makes it a little tricky. But either way, we find a way to get it done one way or another. But as far as as far as kind of touching on the topography topic, now Western Texas, I'm assuming that's relatively flat, correct?
Yeah, the area we hunt is fairly flat.
Okay.
So there's not too far from that's one thing about Texas. You don't have to drive. You can drive forever and still stay in the same state, but man, it changes so far, like all the way across the boat. For the most part, West Texas is pretty flat, but you'll hit some areas that just have some really scenic cliffs and some cool stuff like that. But we're very close to some of those areas, but where we hunt is pretty flat.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so cool. We're just trying to set the scene for everybody so we can kind of picture it. So like now in my mind, I'm imagining nice flat, Texas landscape with the mesquite and the trees and, whitetail and axis and everything running all over the place. But
and plenty of turkey.
Plenty of turkey. There you go. Man, sounds perfect.
Yep.
Sounds perfect. But
yep, it's not uncommon to, a few years ago, you couldn't ever, especially, if you were hunting like a feeder, you wouldn't sit there without seeing 30 or 40 hens come roll through, like almost like clockwork every time. We had some pretty bad droughts, and they started to go away. And then 2 years ago, we just had, one of those deals where it just rained like crazy. And the north edge of the property we hunt has the Concho River run through it. And the river flooded and came, it went way over the banks and flooded out a bunch of stuff, including the that blind that I was in for that first bow kill. You can see inside of it now where the water level got up pretty high. But yeah, the turkey population with all the hens and stuff really started to pick back up over the last couple of years, and the quail, the numbers are really starting to come back out the last couple of years after some good rains.
Awesome. No, it sounds very, very game rich. So it sounds like a nice little chunk of land you got there.
It is definitely game rich. Like we're very blessed out that way with that. So.
Very nice. Very nice. Now, like we were talking about earlier, I do definitely want to circle back and talk some more about the whole axis deer hunting situation. Now, how did you get into that? Was this just like a natural progression that, now that you were exposed to bow hunting and you had access to the axis deer, was it just one of those types of deals, or how did you get into that?
So with the axis deer, it's all the same property, and they really you don't see them mix with the whitetail very often, but they're all out there. So like we were saying with the axis deer, they're an exotic species in Texas, so there's no closed season, no bag limit, so they're pretty much fair game anytime. So if you're just lucky enough to come across them and they're there, then it's fair game. So, and they're in great numbers. So even when I was invited out as a guest to begin with, it was like, hey, especially if somebody wants to shoot an axis doe, it's like, hey, come on.
Yep.
We've got them. So, yeah, like it was just a natural progression. I mean, right from the get-go, it was like, hey, if you see an axis and you like it, then you got the green light. But it was a little later when I shot my first axis. I shot a doe with a rifle, but when I shot my first axis buck with my bow, that was a pretty cool experience overall. And it was kind of actually at the birth of the whole probation period with bow hunting. So we had a good group of people out that weekend. Several of them were rifle hunting, but me and my buddy's dad were both bow hunting, and it was kind of a running joke at camp. And it was funny. I hadn't rifle hunted in a year or two, and I brought my rifle that weekend because there was a rifle stand on the west side of the property where there's always just a lot of activity, and it's just a cool spot. So I was like, I might take my rifle and go sit over there, and I was either at breakfast or lunch. We were all sitting around, and my buddy's dad was giving everybody a hard time, going, well, there's only two real hunters here this weekend, and that's me and Jason, because we're bow hunters. He's like, all you rifle hunters are just giving them a hard time, having good fun. And it was like, okay, well, my rifle is not coming out of the case. So I stuck with bow hunting that weekend, and funny enough, the axis buck that I shot, I had an encounter with about 3 or 4 weeks prior. I had shot a management whitetail buck with my bow over in this same area, and when I went to go look for it, I walked up this ridge back up the other way, and I just heard something just tearing up a tree, just really giving it hell, and I was like, what is that? So I slow down, kind of crept around this edge, and I see this little mesquite and the tree is just, it was just being destroyed. I mean, you see the entire thing just waving back and forth in the air, and then you just see this big, tall axis antler just going up and down it. And it was kind of on the other side of the thick stuff, so all I could see was this antler just going up and down this tree, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. So I knocked an arrow, and as I was going around the edge, it's like, I'm just thinking, I was like, everything is wrong. Like, I'm not, like, how am I going to get there? Like, I'm just sitting there trying to figure it out. So I just crouched down, thinking, and it's like, okay, I'm going to make a move this way. And after I'd been sitting there forever thinking about it, I go to make a move. I look up to my right, and there is an Axis buck in velvet, like at 50 yards, just staring me in the face. I'm like, oh my goodness. And so I just stand there, and then he just turns around and takes off running. And when he did, obviously it spooked up the other one, and they took off. And I was like, my heart was pounding. It was just the most incredible experience. And I don't know how much you've really seen of Axis deer, but if you look at the face of a buck, they have a real dark brow area. It kind of comes down into a V, to where when you look them in the face, they just look pissed off. Like, it's crazy. So to see it at close range at 50 yards was such an intense experience. It was just unreal. So, man, my heart was pounding, and it was just real exciting. And then, I went on, and about 20 minutes later, I recovered my deer that I'd shot, which was a cool experience there. Got it loaded up, went back, and like I said, where we hunt, we talked about it earlier, it's a good drive out there. So it was about 3 or 4 weeks later before we went back, and went back over that same area, and that velvet buck showed up. And so when he showed up, crazy enough, I say that the whitetail and the Axis don't mix very often, but that morning they did. And it was cold. It started off in the lower 30s that morning, and a cold front came through, which brought some rain that dropped it down in the 20s. And so it was getting colder, and it was freezing rain, and this buck showed up. There was him, another Axis buck, and an Axis doe strolled in at the same time. And I was sitting there, and there was a couple whitetail does in, a little 2.5-year-old buck. And when these Axis strolled in, I mean, it looked like a pack of horses walking in compared to those whitetails. They're just so much bigger. And the West Texas whitetail, in all fairness, are small body. So it was just like, oh man, this is awesome. And it was that velvet buck, and I was like, okay, game on. So I text my buddy Eric too, like, hey dude, I got a velvet Axis here. Like, and it was like, get ready, this is happening. And so it took a while, moving around. Where I was hunting, I was in a pop-up blind, and there was one narrow shooting lane, and it was just really looking like he wasn't going to come around there. And then he finally did. I came to full draw, and of course he turns, and basically just his butt is facing me. I was like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. And I had to let the bow down. And then it was like, okay, waiting. And he just kind of hung out in that area, slowly started turning. Thankfully he was looking away, so I was able to get at full draw again. And he slowly turned until he was quartered away, just perfect, and let that arrow fly. And man, it was incredible. So like I said, it was a kind of a rainy morning, and I was using red nocturnal nocks on my arrow, and he was quartering away. The arrow kind of lodged in the opposite side shoulder, so as he ran away, you could see the red light going with him. So thankfully I could see like right where he went, which is awesome. But then it was like, okay, he went just out of sight before he went down. So it was like, okay, I got to give him time. And that was the longest couple of hours, because like I said, the rain rolled in, and I'm just thinking like, oh my goodness, this is going to wash away any blood trail. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm just stressing about it. Like,
sure.
I hope we can find him. Like this rain, like, oh my goodness. And so I waited like 2 hours, and went, and it was actually really crazy, because where my arrow had fallen out and the rain had come through, because the temperature had dropped the way it did, instead of the rain washing anything away, it actually was like almost as if the rain kind of laminated everything, if that makes any sense. Like it just froze over it like perfectly with ice, to where everything was still there, and you could see it, and it was almost preserved. It was a pretty crazy experience. And I followed it up to where I saw him go into the tree line, and just a couple minutes we was able to find him. And just a really cool experience. Real big bodied buck. The base of his antlers are about 8.5 inches around. And it was just an incredibly cool experience. So.
Jeez, yeah, I can only imagine. I've got throughout that story, I think I had probably like 17 questions pop into my head. Now, I mean, as far as I guess I'll tell you what. We'll start with just the axis deer, and then we'll kind of we can work through the process again. But now, I mean, just to start off with, you had mentioned a couple times that the axis deer and the whitetails don't mix too much, and they kind of like different terrain. Now, as far as that is concerned, over a whitetail, what type of terrain would you look for axis in? And did you use that information to kind of, pick the spot that you were hunting in that morning?
The axis, typically, they're going to stay in the thickest stuff they can find. I just feel like as much as a whitetail is a really smart animal, the axis are just smarter. They are more, I don't know, the cautious is the word for it, but definitely more skittish, I guess. I mean, any little thing, like if they're weary of it, they're not going to be there. Mm-hmm. And when they move, it's rare to see them just strolling through. They're usually like on until they get somewhere thick enough that they feel like they're all right. Mm-hmm. They run. So the northeast edge of the property is some pretty thick stuff, and up by the river, and it's just one of the predominant spots you really see them. So. Actually, all three of the axis deer that I have taken so far have all been over in that same area. But for the most part, it's pretty thick mesquite all over the place, so you can see them just about anywhere when you're out there. But where I was has typically become one of the better areas to go if you're looking for axis.
Gotcha. Okay, and so that would be like as a general rule of thumb. I mean, as far as varying times of the year, I know we had talked a little bit off air. So, for the listeners, at varying times of the year, obviously with the whitetails, they're rutting, in the fall, late October, early November. As far as axis deer are concerned, are there peak breeding times, or how does that work?
That's a big debate down here as well. And crazy enough, like, rut for us, like in just different, probably because of the climate differences, we see more rut activity in December than we do any other time. So really right after Thanksgiving is where it starts to pick up for us. The axis deer, it's very sporadic. So when they're in, I guess what you would call their rut, you'll hear the axis bucks, much like an elk that bugles, they make this bellow noise. It's real loud. And, they tilt their head back, curl their lip just like an elk, and it's pretty cool. But you can pretty much go out there year round and hear it because they're all in different cycles. There's no set breeding time. So I've heard on like some of the game ranches they claim the rut like more so in the summer with them, but that might just be because they have them on a game ranch where they have like a group that's more controlled. Mm-hmm, but right. I can tell you that same weekend I shot that velvet axis buck, and even the few weeks before I saw a hardhorn, a velvet axis. It was about 2/3 grown antler wise, an axis buck that had about 2 or 3 inches of growth, but some big bases. So it was a big mature animal, but had basically just started the regrowth process. So they breed year round, and you can see them in all different cycles at the same time, which is a really cool experience as well.
Wow!
But I would say, as far as hunting them, when you get out there during what we would call the off season, when it's not whitetail season, they're very smart animals. So when there's more people around, more pressure, they kind of disappear a little bit. Mm-hmm. But in the summer, if you stroll around out there and nobody's been out there walking around, and because obviously during whitetail season you're going to have a lot of people. Just a lot of people activity, a lot of human activity out there. So when you've had a chance to let that die down, and especially with our property that we hunt being thicker, you can see a lot of axis deer driving, running around. You can just kind of drive through the property on the roads in the truck, and I mean, you can see herds of axis does, and because you'll typically see a group of a good number of does with maybe a buck or two. Mm-hmm. And I haven't been lucky enough to elk hunt, but I've heard that it's compared a lot to elk when you see their activity and the way they kind of travel in some herds. And it's just a really cool experience in the summer. So
Gotcha. No, it makes total sense, like you said, especially if you're keying in on those times where, to your earlier point, whenever the pressure is lower, and they're a little bit more relaxed because there hasn't been as much hunter activity. Makes total sense. As far as body size, obviously they're bigger than the whitetails. Like a big mature buck. What would one of those weigh? Roughly.
Man, I wish I had a good answer for you, but we need to get a scale out there where we are. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess somewhere. I would say 175, 200-ish.
Okay,
but
gotcha.
They also don't. It stays warm down here in the summers. You're gonna have. I mean, they just don't put on the size quite like they do up north in any of the big game animals.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, no, it makes total sense as well. I mean, especially but even whenever you're talking with whitetails, they're inherently smaller than the ones that you would see up north or even up by me. So you can kind of extrapolate that, right. I guess, a little bit. Okay. Gotcha.
Oh, absolutely. And we're from what we're used to, whitetail wise, the body. I guess you call it body to antler ratio, and you watch all the South Texas hunting shows they're all on, and then you see like a show in the Midwest, and for us we're watching it, you see that big old body, and then you see them shoot the deer, and you're like, why'd they shoot that thing? He's tiny, like antler wise, and then you see them put their hands on it, and you're like, oh my goodness, that's huge.
Yep.
So the bodies are significantly different. But that actually, with the smaller bodies, and they don't carry as much weight. I guess you could say it's probably not as hard on the deer, so it actually makes it tougher to age them because you look at the sway back and all the telltale signs in every article that you have online is a Midwest whitetail.
Yeah,
and like there's fairly dramatic differences in all the photographs and videos you see, and for us, they just don't put on that size. So I mean, you can definitely tell young versus mature, but when you're trying to tell a difference between a 4, 5, 6-year-old deer, like it's just not happening for the most part, other than if you've been following that deer and getting pictures for a few years or seeing them for a few years. So we've actually been, we started kind of saving the jawbones and checking them out and trying to age them that way to kind of help educate ourselves as we go along.
Gotcha. Yeah. I haven't done the jawbone myself yet, but I usually try to take a look at the teeth. It's so hard. Where I'm not sure how familiar you are with Pennsylvania hunting, but there's a lot of hunters and not a whole there's a lot of hunters and a lot of deer, but they all get shot. So you see like a 2 or 3 year old, and it's that's saying something if you're seeing something like that walking around. But as far as
right.
As far as age is concerned with the axis as well, I mean, just from an age perspective, when would that maturity level really start kicking in? Like obviously, like with whitetails, you're talking, they're peaking somewhere in the, what is it like? I mean, I'm not a whitetail expert, but I mean, yeah, they're peaking somewhere in that 5, 6, 7 range, maybe. As far as axis is concerned,
be the same with the axis.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very similar as far as that's concerned. You can definitely tell a young one, and we're lucky. We've got some big mature ones out where we are. So in the last few years, I don't know. In scoring wise, like where a whitetail you're going to look at it as like a 140, 160, 180. Axis, they pretty much refer to them in antler height. So like basically a 30-plus inch axis is going to be a trophy by most standards. And we, in the last few years, have had my buddy shot one that was 34 inches tall, and his dad just arrowed one this past October that was 36 inches tall and had a 27-inch spread. So they are big, impressive animals.
That's funny you mentioned the word impressive. That in my mind, I just thought, wow, that just seems like something that just seems impressive. Like to look up in the woods and see that coming through. Oh, I can't imagine. That just sounds awesome.
They're awesome. I mean, they're gorgeous animals, lots of character. They're a darker red predominantly. They have their white spots their entire life. A dark stripe down their back. That dark brow on their face, it just makes them look angry when they stare you down. And man, they're just I just love those animals. They're really cool.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like I said, we weren't planning on talking about axis deer tonight, and now this is like all I want to talk about. But
Yeah, and then when you hear them bark, so when they alert if something that they don't like is happening, you hear them bark. It's a very high pitched bark, and you can hear it from a long ways away. And I can tell you that if they are up close, it's almost like eardrum piercing. I had a axis doe that I actually hate to admit, but I missed. It happens to all of us, but I missed just a mental deal and messed up and, shot way over her back. But she didn't know what happened. And so she scrambled a little bit and went just right into the woods where I couldn't see her, but she couldn't have been more than 30 or 40 yards away. And she's just stomping her feet, barking. And it just went on for so long because she didn't know what had happened or where it came from. And so she stayed in that same place, just barking over and over and over for so long. And it was like, I kind of got to the point like, will you please just run away because my ears are hurting. But it's cool. So hopefully you get the experience to come down to Texas, or I hear that the axis hunting in Hawaii is pretty good as well. Somewhere and check out some axis deer.
Yeah, man, it's definitely on the bucket list. That's for sure. Okay, so now it's kind of getting back to the story a little bit. So again, at this point, you've been able to arrow the buck, on the ground. How far away was the shot?
It was about 27, 28 yards.
Okay,
so not too far.
Yeah.
Yep. So yep, and he ran across the clearing. We've got a few senderos cleared out, so thankfully he ran rather than going up the ridge and back into the trees. He went across the clearing, so I was able to watch him run across there and kind of disappear into the trees on the other side. And he probably didn't go maybe another 30 or 40 yards once he got in the mesquites up that way. So he was right there. He obviously kind of got it. He ran up to where he felt like he was in some cover and clearly bedded down right where he was, and tipped over from there. So
perfect. Wow. Congratulations, first of all. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And second of all, just looked up and looks like we're coming up on time here. And I did want to touch briefly on your company, Bowhunter Box Club, because I think it's a really cool idea, especially for everybody listening. And I'll let you kind of get into it, but it's a really unique idea, and I did want to touch on it very briefly. So before we wrap things up here, Jason, why don't you tell everybody, about Bowhunter Box Club, what it is, what you do, and what you offer.
Yeah, all right. Well, I appreciate that. So Bowhunter Box Club is a monthly box subscription geared specifically for bow hunters. So the subscription box industry is blown up, and it's a lot of fun. Everybody loves getting a surprise every month and some different stuff. So there's definitely others out there that are real popular with a lot of different things. And after a little bit of time and being into bow hunting myself, it's like, why isn't there one serving bow hunters? And I had previously, a couple years ago, started a little business and sold some shirts and hats and some little stuff like that related to bow hunting. They never really did a lot, but made some great connections and kind of fueled my passion for, for doing stuff along that lines and serving people that bow hunt. Because I've always been a bit of a serial entrepreneur and wanting to, do things of my own and always find ways to go about making money. So the Bowhunter Box Club, I talked about it long enough, and everybody I talked to says, wow, that's a great idea. And it kind of spurred from thinking like, I'd like to test different broadheads. But
right.
And I am lucky enough to have a Bass Pro conveniently located. But if you go in there and say you want to test 4 or 5 different broadheads, well, you're going to be dropping $200 at once. And at that point, you're going to go test them, and once you pick one you like, well, you got to go back and buy more. And so it was like, what if there's a way for a lesser cost to get stuff to try out all the time and get quality stuff? And then I listened to other podcasts, which we talked about, including Joe Rogan. And I've listened to him with Cameron Haynes and John Dudley from Knock On, and they were always kind of giving Joe a hard time about being like, what's the word for it? I don't know. He was always testing. If he saw something he liked, he was always buying different stuff and wanted to try it. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And thankfully Joe's in a spot he can just hop on Amazon and buy whatever he wants. No big deal, whatever the cost. So I was like, I like to try different things too. So this could be a cool way to put a box of bow hunting gear in everybody's hands every month. And once I really started to research the idea and the excitement was there, and started reaching out to some companies, that it just all came together. So finally it was like, hey, time to put the pedal to the metal. Got everything formed, been in touch with some really incredible companies. So each month the subscription cost is $40. There are options to prepay for extended periods of time to get some discounts. The best savings is the 12-month where you prepay for a year and you get 12 boxes for the cost of 11. So, but for $40 a month, you're going to get a minimum of $60 to $70 worth of products. My main focus is providing a great service and quality products. I know there's some boxes, and some people get a bad name of like, oh, am I just going to get junk? Is it going to be stickers? And as much as I like stickers for my cooler as much as anybody, or for the back glass of my truck, we will put stickers in there. It's just like little bonus extras, but I want quality products in there. Yeah. There's going to be several times you're going to get broadheads to try. There's going to be accessories for your bow, maybe some scent control type products, and you name it. The list goes on of gadgets that we need as bow hunters. So this brings it to your door, because a lot of people probably aren't lucky enough to have a big box store with a great selection close by. So this brings it to you, allows you to have products in your hand, try it, see what you like. Maybe there's some stuff that you didn't even realize you were going to like, but once you have it in your hands, you get to try it. Can make you be a little more open-minded to some things. And then for new bow hunters too, like, how long does it take all of us to acquire all the little gadgets and knickknacks that we have in our tote boxes and everything that we bring along with us? It allows them to acquire more stuff and useful stuff in a really cost-effective fashion, because, like I said, you're going to get a minimum of $60 to $70 worth of product in your box. Last month was $75+ dollars. So by the end of the year, you're looking at $800+ worth of gear that you're going to have accumulated by subscribing for about half the cost. So It's a real great opportunity to provide that service. And then not to mention, like, some of the companies, it does a good job of getting product in consumers' hands. And, we're a small business. The other small businesses that provide quality product, it can help, be a marketing tool for them as well and get their products to bow hunters out there. Because that's been one of the cool things too, is, letting people know, hey, it's a real bow hunter. Another one of you behind this. It's not a large company that's a money scheme. Like, it's definitely not a. If you're getting into the subscription business thinking it's a money thing, then you got a surprise coming. But it's a cool way to provide a great service for people. So
awesome, man! I came across this first on I think it was Instagram, and I just remember seeing it and being like, oh, what a great idea! It's like it's like Christmas every month, where you get this box, you don't know what's in it, but it's got to have something to do with bow hunting in it, so it's got to be good. So like I said, whenever I came across the idea, I was like, oh, this is pretty intriguing. So. Thank you for.
Absolutely, it's gonna be like Christmas or your birthday every month.
That's right.
And who doesn't love getting a surprise? And to add to that, we're all very familiar with the fact that when you're bow hunting, there's a lot of gear that's too big or too expensive to fit in a monthly box. So that's where we've got an additional program called the VIP Pass-Through Club. So if you join that, we're working with companies to get some great discounts on some products that are useful for bow hunters. So that way. You're going to get discount purchase opportunities on other bigger ticket items. So, like, right off the bat, we've got one from a company that sells, a very well-known company that sells releases. We've got bowstring. We've got some other good stuff in the works. And then, most importantly, everybody's favorite part is chances to win free stuff. So
now we're talking.
Exactly. So the monthly box is you can prepay for terms, but predominantly it's a monthly subscription. So you get charged every month, you get a box every month. The VIP Club is a one-time annual fee, so just every 12 months, one fee, $79, so very affordable. And you're going to get value all year long through all the discount purchase opportunities. There could be some hunting opportunities coming as well. As I get all those finalized, you definitely follow us on social media and stay tuned on what's happening there. But it's also kind of like buying 12 raffle tickets in one. So the monthly giveaways are going to be VIP exclusive. So if you're an active VIP member, you're automatically entered. So in all 12 of them. And month one, we gave away a Hoyt Pro Defiant. And I can tell you that was one of the most rewarding times for me was giving a gentleman named Joseph up in Michigan. He won the Hoyt. Giving him that call to let him know he won was an incredible experience for myself. But this month we're giving away a Matthews bow. So everybody that gets in on that has a chance to win a brand new Matthews Halon 32. And once we have a winner, we'll get the bow in their exact specs and finish and all their choices, so it's exactly what they want. And next month will be an elite bow. So we're giving away some good stuff. And I know a lot of times people pay for raffle they'll pay $70 for one raffle ticket to try to win big ticket items like that. And there's going to be one time a year that the giveaway is going to be really big. And we're working on finalizing that, so I can't say too much, but we're working on it being hunting trip big for that VIP giveaway. So it's lots of exciting stuff there.
Very cool. Well, I'll definitely be sure to link over to all this in the show notes. So if anybody's interested in checking out Bowhunter Box Club, that'll be nice and easily available for them. Because that sounds very intriguing, and who doesn't like a nice surprise every month? So very cool.
Absolutely.
Very cool. All right. Well, I tell you what, Jason, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show and hearing about your first deer hunt and kind of jumping into the Axis thing, and because I really appreciated you having. No, I'm getting all tongue tied at the end. I almost had it perfect.
The Axis deer gets you excited.
That's right. But yeah, definitely enjoyed having you on the show, and like I said, just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, the pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me, man.
Okay, and that will do it for episode 17. As always, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the show. If you do like what you're hearing, definitely leave us a rating or review on iTunes, as it's going to be the best way to get our podcast in front of other listeners. And as always, if you have a hunting story of your own that you'd like to reach out and share with the rest of us, definitely reach out via social media or directly through our website at thehuntsmansjournal.com. I can be reached at adam@thehuntsmansjournal.com. And again, if you have something that you'd like to share with the rest of us huntsmen, please feel free to reach out and we'll get you on the show. So, other than that, that'll be all for today. Thank you all again so much for listening. This is the Huntsman's Journal podcast, and I am your host, Adam Huntsman. We'll see you guys next week for another exciting hunting story.